This is Lit, the Derricks podcast, where we explore purpose, potential, and the human condition. And hopefully uncover some new ways of being and doing in the process. Jump in and join me for a deep dive with my special guests each and every episode for some revelatory, stimulating, and sometimes scintillating conversation. All right, it's time to get lit. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Lit podcast. I'm Derricks, and we have the absolute delightful Arunditha joining me today. She's a poet, songstress, performer, and space opener from Singapore who has the most beautiful, joyful, and infectious presence, as you'll soon discover. I consider our chat a masterclass indeed. We explore her poetic works and cover lots of ground, including the nature of truth, origins of suffering, spiritual bypassing, and what it means to be in the light. We also chat about time and energy, human design, her meditation practice, the concept of space, and barefoot public speaking. We pack so much in this episode, including a little surprise at the end, so make sure you stick around. Please note that this podcast was recorded back in late 2021 when I was in Australia and she was in New Zealand. Arunditha brings an aura of ease, and our soulful chat felt like a warm, gentle embrace. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you will too. Let's get this episode started. Welcome to the show, Ditha.
Hello,
finally made it.
Derrick. Yeah, we made it. Oh we've had all of these adjustments in this age of technology.
It took us about an hour just to get all the tech to work, but I think we've made it.
Yeah, we're here now.
Yes. Yes, it's so good to have you on the show. I think, there's a lot that's changed since we last met. You're in New Zealand, and I have to say you have a spectacular background there. Very Instagrammable. Where are you?
I am on the house bus that is half of my kind of inside living space. So I live on this property. It's a piece of land with a bunch of different people, some families, and we're all living in kind of alternative housing. So my partner and I, we have this bus and a yurt, which is kind of a Mongolian style, really heavily insulated tent. And we live between the two spaces. The bus is kind of our kitchen and our bathroom. We have a shower in the back. I'm not going to show it to you because we're in the middle of renovations. But it is like, Into the Wild, the magic bus that he died on. It's kind of like that.
Wow. Very cool. Like, was this bus part of the deal? Like you said, it came with the property, or you brought that bus on?
Well, the bus has been here for a really, really long time. And it originally belonged to the man who owns the land, who lets us rent this patch of land. But recently, he actually gifted the bus to my partner, so now it's ours. So we have this bus, and the yurt is also ours. So we have these two kind of movable homes that we can lift, dismantle, and transfer somewhere else if we ever wanted to move to a different plot of land one day. Yeah.
Is the bus actually functional? You can actually turn it on?
No, it doesn't function.
Okay.
But we did have a bet with a friend who said that he could get it up and running. So we might just take him up on it.
Yeah, no, that would be really cool. That's one of my dreams, to have an RV and just like travel around. So you're obviously halfway there. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is a very old bus though. So it is, all of these, living like this, the reality is that it's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort. It's very, very different from living in a city and living the way that I used to live in Singapore, in the sense that I've constantly got to do work around here. Like I said, we're renovating the space, or we're gardening, or making adjustments. There's always adjustments to be made, versus like living in an apartment and it's like that's your room and you just clean your room and you share duties in the whole household, but it's pretty like simple, I think, compared to having all this land.
Right. So a lot of gardening. I assumed having all that space, you would be growing your own veggies and stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we're still like really learning how to do it, because my partner is also a city boy convert. Man.
Just to be clear.
He's a man. Yeah. So we're learning together. It's been incredible. In the years since I moved here, I've learned so much about even trees, wood, things to build, how to build things, how to put things together, how to make old things look new. Yeah,
it sounds wonderful. I'm really curious. What made you? I mean, I know that you're like a fairly, you're a homegrown Singaporean. You've written lots of poems about, what you like about Singapore as well as what you don't like. What made you like jump ship and move to New Zealand?
Well, there were a variety of factors, but I think it really just got to this point that felt like the right time. My sister and I had an apartment that we owned together that had been passed down to us from our mother when she died. And my sister got married, and then she decided that she wanted to sell it. And I was like, okay, let's just do it. And I wanted to support her to start her new life with her husband. And it also kind of felt like the right time for me to start transitioning into a new chapter of my life. The reality is that as much as I love Singapore, and I'm grateful for all the ways in which it has shaped me and taught me how to be an efficient, organized person, it also is a big city, and big cities have a certain kind of mechanism, and they are driven by productivity and output. And what I really found is that even though I had such a gift to be working within the field of my choosing, I was still a machine. I was an art-making machine. And I had to put in massive amounts of work as well to do the self-care necessary for me to like maintain balance within my psyche and my body while working really, really hard all the time. And so I just decided that if I didn't unplug, then I wouldn't break the cycle, and I would just end up an instrument.
Wow. I think, look, I'm really envious of where you are and being able to do that, to be in a place where you can make that move. And what made you choose like New Zealand? Was that like a place that you've always wanted to be, or?
No. No, if I had imagined anywhere that I would move to in the world, I don't think I would have imagined this to be it. I really did move here also to start a new chapter with my partner, who I was doing like long distance with for more than 2 years before I moved here. So we met when I was performing at a music festival here in New Zealand for the first time a few years ago. And then we just kept trying to make it work. And it got to a point where the only way for us to really make it work would have been to give it a proper go and live in the same place. And given that he's chosen to live here, and he works in caregiving, so it just wasn't super plausible for him to move to Singapore. And I did want to start to rewild myself, is what I call it. Yeah.
No, that sounds great. Rewild. I like that. Sounds like a book. Could be a book or a movie.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So, I mean, that's obviously not the only thing that's changed. You've moved places and you've changed your name. And I have to say, when I first started when I started working on this podcast, the idea of having a chat with you came up. And then I did have some difficulty trying to find you because I was going, where'd she go? So, yeah, what did this happen at the same time? All this, like the change in location and the name, or how did this all come about?
No, the changing my name, I actually don't really feel like it is phrased right when I say I changed my name, because the reality is that I have just stepped into the name that I have always had, that my grandmother gave me at birth, along with my English name. And being the very logical and left brain dominant Singaporean that I have been for most of my life, I never really questioned that Deborah was my name and the name that I should call myself, because it was in English, and all around me people had English names. On television, all the people had English names, except for like local television. And also, I must admit that I was so heavily colonized that I felt a kind of aversion to using my Indian name for the earlier part of my life, because I felt that that would make me inferior, even, if I'm going to be honest. There was definitely that kind of judgment from myself at a very young age. And it just reached a point within the last year of being here. I mean, first of all, I do still live in a super white area, and New Zealand is still a very post-colonial country, but there are a lot of activists and indigenous people here, and I have like quite a band of sisters here that are doing this kind of work around decolonization and around indigenous rights. And actually, like, I started to really embody that myself and really see like how it is that I have become this, and also the gifts that my ancestors gave me is really what woke me up to wanting to use this name that my grandmother gave me at birth, Arunditha, which means beloved daughter of light. No kidding, okay? I mean, I only found out what this name meant because I was teaching a class to NUS on Zoom, and I mentioned casually that my full name is this and I don't know what my middle name means. And then at the end of the class, the assistant teacher who was from India said, "Deborah, I have a rough translation of your name if you want to know." And I'd tried to look for the meaning and I'd never been able to find it spelt the same way that it's spelt for me. Everybody else spells it quite differently. And so I received the meaning, and she told me in front of this whole class of like 19-year-olds, and I just started crying. And I was just so shocked and amazed that I had this name my whole life, and I'd just been completely ignorant of what it meant and how powerful it was. And so that happened sometime last year. And then when I woke up on the first day of the new year, a voice told me that I had to start using my real name. And I resisted. I tried it a little bit. You know, I occasionally introduced myself as Ditha or Arunditha, but it just didn't feel right. And then at some point, it just became easy, and I made the clear decision, and I just did it. I changed my name on social media. I changed it on my website. I changed it on, all sorts of platforms. I got in touch with people and told them that I had changed my name. Returned to my name. And then I decided that I would just stick to it. And it is like, it is something that I worried about, actually. Like, I spent so much of my life building this thing, you know, creating a constant, like, authentic self that at some point was receiving a lot of work and a lot of opportunity and attention. And changing my name obviously meant that things like what happened to you would happen, that you try to Google me and you can't really find me. But I actually came to the conclusion that it didn't matter because the people who come into contact with me with this true name, they will know who I am now. And the people from the past who really want to find me will find me if they're meant to find me.
Right. So it's actually helped. It's helped you get rid of all the noise, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of cut some clarity into my sphere.
Yeah. Wow. So I didn't realize it was just this year that you had done this. I thought maybe you'd done it before this whole COVID thing, but wow. So I know that when we first spoke about doing this podcast, one of the things you mentioned was that you didn't want to talk about the things that have happened in the past, the history, all that stuff, because I guess it's part of this process that you're just talking about. So I think that's cool because we'll switch it up, because normally we talk about origin stories and things like that, dig a bit into the past. So we'll switch it up for this episode. And this actually brings to mind something that I once saw, and forgive me for referencing pop culture, but I once read or saw something that Kanye said, and it was in reference to saying, why do we have history classes? We should have future classes. And for some reason, that's about the only thing that's really, well, one of the main things I've like resonated from me from him is, and I really like that concept. You know, we spend so much, I think probably everyone spends way too much time looking at the past, and we don't spend enough time, you know, being now and looking into the future. So I like that idea. Having said that, I do think it's important to touch on one of the things that has made you who you are, or in terms of where you've made a mark in the world, and that is poetry, which is, you know, how I know you, because I actually got dragged along by a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, to your body poetry workshop, which is like about, I think, 3 years ago. I don't know whether you remember.
Yeah, I do. I just remember.
It was a little workshop.
Yes.
And it was a lot of fun, and I like what you did in terms of, I know this body poetry thing is something that you've kind of evolved or created, which I like. I love the concept of, because I'm really into movement, and you kind of like putting these two things together. Is that still something that you do?
Yeah, body poetry, yeah, was definitely something that I was quite interested in for a while. And really what I wanted to communicate and what I was trying to get to was a way to help those who attended the workshop see that a story is a kind of energy. And the body poetry workshop is kind of a modality that I use to help translate this message that every story contains a kind of fundamental energy that can be translated into different forms. And that is artistry. It is the translation of energy into form, into some kind of aesthetically interesting form. It doesn't always have to be like pleasing. It can be uncomfortable, but even in the discomfort, often there is a kind of beauty. I really resonated with what you said that Kanye said, actually. And I do want to say that I do think it is really, really, really important to recognize and honor and pay respects to where we come from and where we have been, because it does make us who we are. The only thing is that so much of my life and so much of my earlier work, especially as a poet, was centered around revisiting these stories that have been for a long time clothed in a lot of pain. Yeah, I've had a lot of like painful stories that I've told again and again and again. And now more than ever, I don't want to perpetuate them in the same form. Not with this lens of them being these devastating, painful things that happened to me, because in fact, all of those things that happened were incredible gateways for my evolution and my learning and my development into the individual that I am now, who is able to have been empowered by those things that happened instead of perceiving them to be some kind of tragedy. And that's why I don't like to talk about them so much, because a lot of the time when I express them or if I give energy to those experiences, maybe they might be misinterpreted, because people often say, oh, I'm sorry, or oh, that sucks, that happened.
Yeah.
And that's really not how I feel anymore. It's just what happened in order for me to get to this point. Yeah.
No, I like that. I like, I guess also that obviously the writing of the poem and the performing of the poem at that time served a purpose, and now you've kind of just moved to a different place.
Yes.
I did listen to some of your poems, and they were quite. Some of them were very moving to me. I was also interested that you wrote poems about Singapore. One Sin City, which was kind of. I'm just wondering, just from a perspective, because Singapore is. There are some restrictions and all that. Did you have any fear in kind of saying some of these things? Because they were quite pointed in the direction of what you were saying. And I know you do a lot of stuff within the Singaporean arts community. So I'm just wondering, how does that sit? How did you find the courage or whatever it was that allowed you to express those kinds of things?
So I know the law. I did look quite closely at the law to understand what I could or could not say. And so I never say anything that is illegal.
Okay.
I only say what is legal.
Okay.
I don't use names.
Right.
I don't use any kind of identifying information. And I don't make statements about people's intentions or their malintent. Yeah. Yeah. Those are kind
very
of like
smart.
those are the fundamental rules. And that's actually one of the beautiful things about poetry is that you can allude to things. You can suggest, you can paint a picture without explicitly saying anything.
Yeah. And you know what I love also was that not only you did that, but you also had a great poem called Angry Singapore, which was pointing out all these people always complaining about everything. So it was a nice balance, I thought. You brought the humor there and then the real angst in the Sin City. One of the poems that actually really I felt really resonated with me was actually your one called Sisterhood.
Yes.
I really loved what you did there. It was very moving for me, and I really loved that one. Did you want to share anything about that particular one? Is that something that you still feel, or that's still also like, I'm over that?
No, I love that one too, and I'm glad that you appreciate it, especially since, you are in a male body. So it's amazing that you resonated with that poem. I wrote that because I was really questioning and seeing how competitive we are with each other, whether brothers or sisters. But with sisterhood, this kind of competition manifests in its own form. And because I think a lot of women, especially in Asia maybe, but I feel all over the world, have been taught to value their physical appearance as something that gives them power. Like I was taught that. I shouldn't say them. I was taught that I had to be physically attractive, that I had to look a certain way, that I had more value if I had all of these traits. And so really I wrote Sisterhood because I was identifying within myself this tendency to walk into a room and feel myself measuring the competition, feel myself measuring other women and feeling the threat of another woman's power as something that diminished my own, instead of just recognizing that if I was fully in my power, nobody else could threaten me, and they wouldn't want to, because true power is kind and loving and has no need to cut others down and is not threatening at all. Often, if I am in a room now and I sense that maybe another woman is uncomfortable or triggered around me, which does happen because I am friendly and powerful, I make an effort to show them love and to connect with genuine care, and 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 spread this seed of empowerment, being love. Yeah, that's what I want.
No, I love that. And I think it's interesting what you mentioned about when you walk into a room and you can sense if someone feels threatened, or you feel that sort of unease. And it just brings to mind one of these exercises that I recall. I think I did it. It was like in one of these personal development type things, where one of the group exercises they get you to do is you have to go up and you have to speak to someone that you're scared of, or that makes you feel that way. And it's really super interesting to kind of try and deconstruct, why is it that you feel threatened, or why is it that you feel not good enough, or whatever it is, to try and I don't know, try and work around that or get over that.
Totally.
And that's lovely. Yeah, it's lovely that you're aware of that and you try and help that person to, confront those kind of issues. The other poem that really stood out for me was the I Love You poem. That was, I guess, I don't know, I think it was one that was filmed in your backyard, it looked like, with a couple of cameras. But it was a very powerful, I thought, a very powerful performance. I really liked the particular line where at the end, where you say you're enlightened in darkness with no one around. And that's a very kind of interesting. It was interesting to me. Can you share about what you were going with, where you're going with that?
I think that at the time I wrote the poem, I was experiencing intense amounts of loneliness and sadness and pain as a result of my mother's passing. And so what that poem was about was actually, I think, my confusion about loving and about a commitment to loving, because I felt that what was the point of loving something if it was just going to die? And this was actually one of the main driving forces behind me writing that poem, even though it was covered in lots of questions about monogamy and about love and relationship structures and these kinds of things. So in that moment, when I wrote that line, what I was trying to say was that my moments of realization are solitary and are lonely. But now, when I hear this line, what I'm actually realizing is that I am my greatest teacher, and so are you, and so is the next person, and so is every person after that. Nobody else can enlighten us except ourselves. And so obviously when we find the light, it often happens through the darkness. It happens in a moment of darkness that we move towards the light and then we see. Before that, it was not illuminated, and then it was. And often the illumination comes from the inside. It's not something that someone can provide us. Perhaps they are the trigger for it. Perhaps they say a sentence and that sparks a thought, but the thought comes from within. The connection with what is said in the outside, it emerges from inside us. Yeah, so that's how I feel. I forgot about that line. I'm so glad
Really?
you brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was like one of the, I mean, the whole poem's powerful, but that just kind of stood out for me at the end. Speaking of writing and being inspired and, you know, your workshops, you did, when I did your workshop, we did have to like write some stuff. And I was just actually, I found the poem that I wrote in your workshop. I'm not gonna go over that one, but it's a little bit funny. But in the preparation for this interview or this chat, this podcast, I actually got a few lines came to me. So I actually was, with your permission, I wanted to just share my little piece of writing. Not looking for a direct, I'm not looking for, what do you call it?
No
I'm not
feedback.
asking for. Well, you can give feedback, but I'm just saying I'm not trying to, what do you call it? Wrangle some free advice in this process.
Okay, got it.
But anyway, here we go. So it's my little piece of spoken word. So I was watching your videos, listening to your voice. I found it. Yes. Floating on the electric echoes of piano keys, melodies, and beats, feeling like they were tapped out just for me. So many questions. I'm ready, my heart open. Oh, Arunditha, tell me. I really want to know who you are and your concept of your artist self, how you seem to have it all so together, consumed within your creative flow, yet so organized, website, CV, and press kit, a true pro. A pleasure to work with, feels like a warm glow from within golden rays on a sunny day, across these ocean waves, through the cosmic magic super info highway. Thank you.
I like that you brought up that a couple of people have given me compliments on how you can download my CV on my website. And I'm really grateful that gives the impression that I'm really organized. I try. I probably could be more organized, but I think Singapore really did set me up right for some basic skills, you know. Actually, when I was living in Australia, so I moved to Australia for a year and a half, to where you are now. Actually, I lived in Brisbane. In West End.
West End, wow,
yeah,
very cool,
yeah,
very bourgeois,
yeah,
bohemian.
Yeah, I lived there for more than a year. While I was there, I made some real close friends. And they came to visit me in Singapore a couple of years later. And when I was living in Australia, they always asked me, like, Deborah, how do you do it? How do you just, like, do all this work? And for me, I just felt like I was a slacker and not really achieving anything. But to them, coming from a different culture, that's not what it appeared to be. And then when they came to visit me in Singapore and looked around and saw what the city was like, they were like, oh, this is why you are like this, because you come from this place. With all the signs and all the things in boxes and everything. Yeah, clearly organized.
Yes, well, yeah. It makes my job super easy in terms of just doing all the background. Everything's there. So yeah, I really appreciated that. Anyway,
once you found me.
Sorry. Yeah, I found you.
Once you found me with my new name.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you're doing now, because you've set up this Be Yourself website. Sounds like you actually set it up this year as well, right?
Yeah, I actually set it up last month.
Last month, wow, it's fresh.
Yeah, it's really fresh. And before that, I had a different project called Speak It Into Light. And it's actually been quite an interesting journey, because I have been doing this quite like spiritual healing, transformational work with people for a couple of years now, at least, and I learned all of these different modalities, and I knew that I needed to learn them in order to be able to facilitate working with other people and assisting them and supporting them to move through whatever and be more in the direction that they want to go. But I just couldn't see so clearly how it all fit. And the first version of trying to put it all together was this website called Speak It Into Light. And the domain was still a love domain. So it's speakitintolight.love was the original website. But the thing is that Speak It Into Light was very much of this same story that I've told for such a long time, which is out of the darkness into the light. In order for one to transform, in order for one to grow, in order for one to be the person that they want to be, they have to experience all of this darkness and pain, and then you use the pain and then you transform it into this bright, radiant thing. But yeah, you need to suffer for your success, you know. It's quite actually also something to do with my programming, my upbringing. I don't know whether it's so much related to Singaporeanism. I think some people might say so, but I think it might even be quite an Asian thing, you know.
What, this whole thing
sure.
that you have to suffer to succeed?
Yes, that you have to suffer to achieve things. You have to suffer to get anywhere. That you have to put in hard work, or you will not be as successful as someone who doesn't like work themselves to the bone.
Yeah. I think that's also very prevalent, and something that I want to really try and push out there as well. It's very prevalent in the fitness industry, in training. You know, it's always like no pain, no gain. This whole thing about the same thing. And I think the industry is moving towards pain-free performance or pain-free training. So very similar in that respect.
Yeah, I really like that. Thanks for saying that. So that's what I was doing, and that's the first version of the work that I was pushing out there. And then something really changed for me in the last couple of months, and I have been doing this spiritual work for a while, and I've had different teachers, different mentors, different guidance along the way. And most recently, one of my guides said to me, I remember so clearly, he said, the point when I was given the choice. I could keep experiencing the duality of darkness and light, or I could just choose the light and choose to be in the light. And I'd had this story that I was always going to experience darkness because it was a part of me. But I just reached this point when I realized it simply wasn't true, and that I had the option to just choose the light. And so that's what I chose. And that's where I am now. And so I had to completely rebrand my website because I was just like, I don't resonate with that story anymore. And I just realized that when I was a child, I used to love rainbows and butterflies. I remember when I was a teenager, 14, 15, you know, before I had like fully stepped into being like damaged. I loved like rainbows, and I had this like rainbow umbrella that I would carry everywhere, and my friends called it my rainbow stick, and I had these like tons of like butterfly earrings and like butterfly t-shirt, and that was just my style. I was all like, yeah. And then from there, I gradually moved into like black eyeliner and studded belts and like screaming in a metal band, you know. But I feel that the real me was always rainbows and butterflies, and I just got kind of, distracted along the way. And it really feels that I've found my way back, you know? It's good.
How did that, like, what is, other than just like being like guided onto this path, how do you shift that experience of your life from having that duality and now just on the light, in the light?
I think it is really as simple as saying that I have just chosen. And I think it is as simple as saying anyone can choose. But it is slightly more complicated than that because of what we might call bypassing. I don't know if you've heard this word. So bypassing is something that happens a lot in kind of more spiritual or conscious communities, where people who are unwilling to be authentically with whatever is coming up for them right then and there, put forth an image or present a version of themselves that is in the light, even though at the same time they are judging or angry or feeling really negative. And this act of pretending, of not authentically being with what is showing up right then, is what we call bypassing, is something that prevents the processing of what is preventing a person from entering the light in the first place. Because the reality is that in order to be in the light, one has to process what is preventing one from being in the light. And that's the truth. And it doesn't mean that you have to suffer. The suffering actually comes from resistance. The suffering actually comes from the thing showing up, the emotion, the thought, the negative experience that is within the body or within the mind or within the heart space. And that negative experience being like judged and rejected. And that's suffering because it's separation. It's a rejection of the reality of who we are. We are everything that has happened to us. We are all of the wide spectrum of emotion. Even the most enlightened individual still experiences a whole spectrum. They just know how to allow it to be there and not like push it away. Like that's really what enlightenment is. Enlightenment isn't like being zen and blissful like without ever having to deal with challenging emotions. It's a way of dealing with challenging emotions. Yeah.
So basically,
does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that's great. I think so. Basically, what you've eliminated is this suffering component, which is this no longer pushing away or rejecting or resisting, but instead whatever comes, we just to go with that, process it, allow it, get whatever message there is, and then move on. So that's what in the light means, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And while doing that, to like not project whatever is coming up on the people around us,
Right.
which is actually one of the also most difficult parts. can be really hard because when yeah.
No, yeah, I think it's no, just because when you say that, I think it's a blind spot for most people, right? People generally are not super aware when they are like projecting, which is why they just continually do it. Do you have any kind of right? I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
Like what's I'm just curious, like what is a way of helping, of being more cognizant of or aware of when this happens? If you are projecting, how can you sound an alarm bell or raise a flag?
Okay, so this might be challenging to hear, but my perspective, and perhaps a perspective that is shared along with many other people who practice meditation or Buddhism even, is that when there is anything that shows up in our reality that is causing discomfort or frustration or anger or sadness or blame, whenever we feel that someone else is causing the emotional experience that we are having, that is a projection, because nobody else can create something within us. Whatever comes from within us comes from within us, and we're just looking for someone to blame. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's actually the clearest indication, is when like something comes up and you're like, oh, it's because of them, and actually it's like, no, it's coming from you. It came from me. The thing that's there now in my body has come from inside me. The person didn't like take it and shove it down my throat. They didn't put it there. It arose from within me, and that's the reality. As difficult as that is to accept, I've really struggled to accept it. I often still try to blame people for my shit, but it's simply not the truth. They didn't do it to me. I am experiencing an emotion that is often founded in something that has happened in my lifetime in the past. And in that moment, when I experienced that emotion in the past, a pattern was born. And what made it a pattern is that because in that moment I felt pain, or I felt aversion, or I felt resistance to what was showing up, I decided that I wasn't going to let it happen again, or I decided that I didn't want it to happen again. And so whenever a situation in the future showed up that contained a similar dynamic, or that I interpreted as containing a similar dynamic, I would try to resist it, or I would try to blame the other person for creating this uprising of emotion within me, which is actually a memory.
Yes. And then going back to that whole history, the whole history thing, trying to rewild. Maybe that's a good, I guess, being in where you are right now, separating yourself from the general system, so to say. It's kind of, it helps in the process of being able to be more clear and see things better.
I think so. I've had a lot of space, I think. I mean, physical space also. You know, there's so much physical space.
In your work, I mean, on your website, on your Be Yourself website, there's kind of a lot of different modalities you use. I'm really curious about some of those. Like what you're talking about just then about, seeing those patterns from the past. Is that the regression and personal transmissions part of what you do? Or that's something else?
No, it is a component that can help with identifying the pattern. So that modality that I mentioned, regression, is really about me as a practitioner holding space for the client to travel within themselves to the place that perhaps first seeded that that pattern. And often when something shows up in this kind of regression exercise, which is basically like a really, really, really low level hypnosis, it's just a complete state of relaxation, during which the client can kind of allow something to rise up that is ready to be seen and ready to be worked with. And we use that as a kind of springboard. But this kind of information retrieval, it often works best and can only be really used with people who are not super in their head. So it has to be someone who's maybe had a little bit of experience with visualization and some kind of like meditation. A lot of people, especially people who live in cities, actually find it hard to enter the low brainwave states, which is really what's required to be able to receive information from the subconscious this way. And so that's where something like a personal transmission comes in to take the place of that, where effectively I am opening up to any information that I can receive from their energy field and translating the information that I receive from their energy field and speaking it to them as a kind of, I guess, channeling, you might say. And really, like, channeling is just about tuning into a particular signal and expressing the signal, giving the signal form in a way like art gives energy form. Channeling gives energy form. Again, yeah.
And that's amazing that you do this over the internet, right? Just over a Skype or a Zoom call.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I can do it in person too, but it works over the internet.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It doesn't take up any extra bandwidth.
Say that one more time.
I was just saying it doesn't take any extra bandwidth. It won't count towards your kilobytes. It's using the conscious, the cosmic airwaves. So I find, I'm really impressed, like, with how you've kind of really explored this whole realm and this transition from being the performer, writer, now being more of a, I guess, I don't know, how a healer, or what would you say your primary, or I mean, has it changed? I mean, I assume that you're probably still doing a lot of writing and stuff, but it seems like your focus now is more on helping people rather than necessarily being front and center.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Actually, something that I really came into acceptance about over the last couple of months again was that I am also here to perform. It's very, very, very important for me to keep doing that. So I'm actually singing at an event over the weekend. It's a winter solstice gathering, so I'm gonna sing there, and it's important for me to keep singing because, again, the songs that come out of me, I don't plan them, and they're also, again, just like a transmission of some kind of energy, some kind of service, some kind of gift, you know? I really see that now, and I think it might be easy to perceive what I'm saying as immodest, you know, like you think that you're a freaking gift. but it's not really immodest. It's really just that I know that that is my place. I'm here to offer what I have learnt and gathered over the course of my short lifetime, and many long lifetimes before that. And the way that I can best serve humanity or the people around me or my community now is through doing this work, this like kind of service-oriented coaching work, but also through just sharing the sounds that I have been blessed to receive from the universe that just come out of my mouth, basically.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about that actually. Your singing is like it's a very unique style. It's very raw. It's very primal, and I'm just wondering how did you discover that, or how did that come to you?
Well, I guess I've just been like kind of allowing the sounds to come out of me for some time now, and so I don't really refine. I do kind of just sing spontaneously, and actually within the last year, I would say that my voice has changed and expanded quite a bit to hit really, really high notes, and I guess lower notes, and I've had a lot of sounds come out of me recently as well that I know from my ancestors and from other parts of the world. So for me, it's also just a process of surrendering, like I'm not thinking about it. I'm not trying to sound a certain way. I'm just allowing the sounds to come out of my mouth without trying to control them or stop them, because I trust them to guide me. And now, actually, more than ever, I trust myself after all of this work that I have done, and all of the shifts that has happened for me to be where I am now. I really trust that what I'm doing is not self-serving, and it's not for the sake of becoming famous. It's not for the sake of being the center of attention or for receiving gratification or validation of my worth. It's really just because that's what I'm here for, and I trust that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. When you talk about the way you just surrender, and I know you've talked about all the work you've done in the past, so I'm just wondering, these days when you do create, and when you do sing, when you do write, do you just do it when you feel like it, or do you have kind of some structure towards it, like you dedicate a particular time of the day where, okay, this is my writing time? How does that all work?
So I've actually recently just instilled a 4-day work week for myself. And this is also to keep some boundaries around my, the health of my life and my relationship, and my social relationships. And I actually find that I am way more effective when I work with goals and I work with time constraints. So I have goals, and the goals help me to understand when I need to complete things by. I have deadlines, and the deadlines also serve the same purpose. But within a day, I just flow through whatever I feel like doing. But it is very much the end point of when the thing needs to be produced that drives the intensity of my focus on a certain thing. I'm not really interested in feeling large amounts of stress So I always try to give myself more space to finish the things, instead of trying to create things under pressure. But I do really appreciate the pressure of the final goal. Yeah.
Yes. Totally agree with you on that, the whole pressure thing, and yeah, and also just setting boundaries. Like I used to be typical type A, constantly going all the time. But yeah, definitely now I build in, this is my rest time. I'm going to work this many hours or this kind of block of time. So yeah, totally get
Yeah.
that.
I've recently been quite into a framework called human design. It's again one of these kind of alternative frameworks to understand reality, or to understand human beings. Much like astrology is a different language, for example, and completely unbacked by science, but having its own mathematics, of course, just a different structure than what's commonly recognized by the patriarchy. So this human design has a perspective on each of us having our unique design and living by our unique design. So accepting our gifts and our function, and working with our gifts and our unique energy signature instead of resisting and trying to be something that we're not, which often we try to do because there is like a majority of the population that is of a particular type, and they are the workers. They are the ones who are born with a lot of energy to kind of constantly work. And that's their function, and it's beautiful and amazing. But I was, according to human design, born with a different kind of purpose, which is the planting of the seeds, the initial creation of something that eventually might gather steam through the help of a generator, and something that has been really interesting for me to accept and allow is just like knowing that I can only be so productive with so many hours in a day, and according to human design, my design, some people say, is only meant to work 4 hours in a day.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's what. So I'm assuming from what you're saying that this human design paradigm is that you have to fill out some data or give some input, and then it will give you a report on this
Yes.
is how you function best.
Yes,
And
exactly.
your report says 4 hours a day.
My report says you will start things, and that is why you are here. You are here to start things, and you don't necessarily have to finish things. That is not your place. Your place is to conceptualize the thing and to build the thing, and then it will run through the help of others. And that's actually been quite helpful, and relieved me of some pressure, and also helped me to understand like why I've just been like, doing all of these different things like my whole life. It's just quite comforting actually to hear different perspectives, like, I mean, I'm really into human design right now. I might be into something else next week, who knows? But I really appreciate that so many people all over the world have come up with different frameworks and different paradigms, as you call them, to view our ways of being. and to understand why we are the way we are, and to also allow us to be ourselves without this like judgment and fear and wondering why we can't like function like the next super generative person. Yeah.
No, that sounds super interesting. I would be very curious to look into that. Where can people find information about this human design thing that you speak
Super
of?
easy. Yeah, you just Google it. There's like
Okay.
loads of websites, and there's loads of free resources. People write blogs on it, free blogs. So at any point, if you get your chart and you want to understand your chart better, you can just Google different elements in your chart to have a bit more explanation as to what they mean. And then obviously, like with anything in the spiritual industry, if you wanted to pay more money to receive more information about your thing, you could do that. But I would say that there is loads of free information available if you don't want to do that. And that free information will be enough to kind of give you an idea about how this thing works.
Is there any particular website or resource that you recommend that you've found to be useful?
I've used a lot of different ones. So I think the more diverse the information you can gather, the better.
Yep.
Because
Okay.
there's not that much like contradiction, you know. Like, I mean, there might be a few people that say some things that are slightly like misaligned, but most of the time, everyone shares a perspective and can just give you a bunch of different lenses to understand the same thing. Yeah. But the
All
first
right.
thing is just to
Cool.
get your chart, and you can get that super easily on multiple websites.
All right. We'll do that straight after we hop off this call.
Awesome.
Now, with regards to your Be Yourself project, was there anything that you particularly wanted to share about that? Because it sounds really awesome what you're doing, and you're bringing in so much of your experience, and the shamanic medicine. These are all, a lot of this stuff's very new to me. So, yeah, was there anything that you feel particularly that you wanted to share about that?
So I think the main thing is that being yourself is an idea that is for everyone. And it's really, really simple. It is an idea that each of us is really, truly unique, because we are a combination of all the information within our bloodline, and all of the information of our soul or our spirit, whether you believe that or not. Even just the fact that the way that your genes have manifested within your body, within your physical body, is really like unique. Even twins might manifest certain parts of their genome and not manifest others in the form of behaviors or such things. And so really what this project is about is to inspire those I work with to really come into full acceptance of their uniqueness, because we do live in a heavily conditioned world. We do live in societies that have taught us that we have to do things a certain way, speak a certain way, think a certain way in order to have what we want. And really, what we do want, like intrinsically, is love, acceptance, and joy. those are really like some basic needs we have. And I think actually when we are not being ourselves, when we prevent ourselves from fully expressing who we are, whether or not that expression is some kind of outward behavior, whether or not our fullest expression is for us to be like a radical skater dude, or whether our fullest expression is for us to be like an introverted, science-oriented woman. That is who we are. And the sooner that we can accept that and truly allow ourselves to embody that and find peace with that, the sooner we can like move on to really doing what we're here for, instead of wasting all this energy on trying to control who we actually are to fit into the metrics that we have interpreted from our surroundings. Yeah.
No, that's great.
And
that's
so
great.
what I'm really doing, and what the work that I'm doing is about supporting people into finding that through obviously these more like esoteric or energy oriented modalities, but also through really approachable modalities that are not really that spiritually oriented, like in their presentation at all, yet at the same time they are, because everything is energy, everything is spirit. That's the premise for my work. Yeah.
On the topic of that, on that whole energy and consciousness, and you've mentioned it before, meditation, is that something that you actually practice on a daily basis, meditation, or is it just, or it's more intuitive for you, you just kind of go into that whenever it calls?
Yeah, I meditate every day. It's like brushing my teeth.
Awesome.
And
When
it's
do you,
not
how,
it's not something that I do because I feel like I have to do it either. So when I say I'm brushing my teeth, like I don't brush my teeth like because I feel like I am supposed to brush my teeth. I brush my teeth because if I don't brush my teeth, then my mouth doesn't feel good. And if I don't meditate, then my mind and my body doesn't really feel good, because there's this like residue that needs to be kind of processed. And so when I sit in meditation, I can just like see what the residue is, and then I can process it, and then it's not there anymore. Yeah.
it's like a daily reset. How do you meditate, or when do you meditate? Is it like first thing in the morning, in the evening?
Yeah, often I meditate first thing in the morning, unless I have to get up really early for a call like I did today. I had to wake up at 7 a.m. to speak to a client in Spain. But often I get up and I meditate for, maybe like half an hour, and then I get up and continue on with my day. And then at nighttime, I do a practice that is based in Tantra meditation, like classical Tantra. So when I say the word Tantra, sometimes people think of something that is sexual, or like very pleasure-based. But all of these kinds of associations that we have with the word Tantra actually come from the evolution of classical Tantra into like more modern Tantra perspectives, which are very focused on like pleasure and bliss and ecstasy, and sometimes maybe focused on attaining those things instead of really like being with what is there. Which is what classical Tantra is about. So yeah, I practice this meditation that kind of like moves things around in my body, and actually also like increases the energy in my body, and allows me to function better as a human.
You do this at night, did you say? The Tantra meditation?
Yeah, I do it. Yeah, I do that at night. Yeah.
And so the Tantra meditation's more structured, it sounds like you have to direct
Yes.
your energy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's sounded. I like do movement and sound and
Oh, right.
kind of
Okay.
like move things through the body and yeah,
I'm just
visualize.
curious.
There's visualization too.
I'm just curious. That sounds like a very energetic type of a meditation, but that it's better for you to do it in the evening before you go to sleep as compared to in the morning. I'm just wondering, being so physical, how does that work, or what's the logic or the reasoning? I'm curious.
You can do it anytime.
Yep.
And I actually like, even though it increases the energy, like that actually just like floods my body with a lot of like peace and calm,
Right.
because
I
it
gotcha.
like flushes me with a different vibration. And then
Yeah.
after my vibration changes, I feel very like calm and blissful. And it's
Right.
quite easy for me to go to sleep then and have like, wacky and beautiful dreams. Yeah.
All right. Gotcha. Oh, I just wanted to say one thing I've noticed. One thing that's been very apparent is that I really like how you really take your time, and you're not afraid of gaps. You give yourself the space to think about your answers, and you're very comfortable with it. You're very, which is awesome. I think the pause.
Yeah. Yeah, that. Thanks for saying that. I think about something that I've been working on, which is this idea of taking up space, which I think a lot of us find really hard to do, actually, to really allow ourselves to speak and to be in our own time, at our own pace, in our own place, instead of trying to rise or move or shift to meet someone else's expectation or what we perceive to be someone else's expectation. So it is, again, me working or finding the truest way to be myself. Yeah.
And allowing
Again.
that space. I love that. One of the things, and it brings to mind something that when I get the chance to like perform or be on stage, one of the things that I was taught, or I remember being taught, was that before you go on stage, that you want to stand there, you want to feel the space and breathe it in, and just to help settle, rather than just going on and just feeling like you just got to rattle everything off and yeah, just get everything out there. So yeah, that's great. I thought we would kind of wrap things up by talking about the one of the TEDx talks that you gave a while back, the tipping point. Not so much the content of it, but more so some of the things you mentioned at the end, which I really love. And one of those things was when you ended the speech, you're talking about barefoot walking. And I noticed you're always barefoot at all of these TEDx talks. That's something I assume that you would definitely do where you are. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So when did that
Not
start?
as much in winter.
Sorry? Not so much in winter?
Not as much in winter. Yeah.
Sure, understand.
Definitely. Yeah, I have socks on and
When did you start becoming a barefoot person?
I think I started becoming a barefoot person when I was first living in Australia in 2014, I think it was.
Okay.
And I had this band of brothers and sisters, and we were sitting around the fire in the night time, telling stories and talking about ideas and politics and resistance and change. And we would go to dance in the forest at parties that were held in the forest. And we would walk around in West End without shoes on as a point of resistance, choosing, even though we were in a city, to be as wild as possible, no matter the dangers. I guess it was that time that I started to do it as a kind of like point to myself. I think more than anything, I was trying to stay true to my guiding principle, which was connection, and the fact that when I wasn't wearing shoes, there was just one more part of me that was connected to the earth and connected to my environment and connected to what other people were connected to if they were standing in the same room as me. And so I felt that by being barefoot a lot of the time, I was able to feel more and sense more, and also to be more rooted and more grounded, more solid and more trusting and more held by my earth mother.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you, when you were in Singapore, when you're outside, were you wearing shoes, or you only kind of like?
Oh, I often wore shoes in Singapore. I mean, I think it was definitely something I did as a practice when I went on stage, because it helped me also to be less nervous. If I was nervous, it helped me to be more present if I was feeling a bit fidgety. So that was definitely one of the reasons why I did it. And when I came back to Singapore after living in Australia, I definitely felt less of an urge to not wear shoes, just because I maybe didn't see the point in trying to make a point. I would walk around barefoot in my neighborhood. At the time I was living in Buena Vista, and if I was going to the shop or something, or just walking down to the corner or something, then I wouldn't wear shoes. But I think at that point when I was living in Australia, I was really like finding my true rebelliousness. It really felt like, I had this like group of other hippies, and I thought that I was a hippie when I was living in Singapore. I thought that I was like bohemian and anti-establishment. And then when I moved to Brisbane, I found people that like taught me how to climb cranes and break into construction sites to like sit there and watch the city, and taught me how to climb trees, and they were like tying themselves to demolition equipment to stop fracking, and like it was it was a whole other level of intervention. And so that's what it was about for me at first. But then when I came back to Singapore, I was like, what is the point? I had to figure out other ways to make myself heard, because I wouldn't be able to tie myself to a tree and get any kind of response except imprisonment. And I'd already done that, so I wasn't interested. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now, I've just got into this whole barefoot running thing, which is
wow.
yeah, it's very cool because there was a book called Born to Run, which it was an audiobook I listened to, and they talked about these ancient tribe, I think in South America, where they just wear sandals and they do these like 100-mile runs in sandals. So I got inspired to ditch the kind of typical running shoes with their high heels and get something that is zero drop, which is, you know, how our feet were naturally designed to work. So yeah, I've been running in sandals, which has been great. I really love it.
Wow. So do you have like specific sandals that you use for running? Are they like Vibrams or something?
Yeah. It's one of the guys in the book. He started the sandal line, so I bought one of his from the States, the lunar sandals. So yeah, they use a Vibram sole, but it just looks like a pretty much like a thong or a, what do you call them, flip flop. It's like a flip flop, but it just had some extra strapping around the ankles to keep it on. So. Yeah.
And do you have to do this running like can you do it on the pavement, or do you have to be on earth to minimize impact?
Oh, no. You can do it anywhere. I mean, this whole thing about impact, it's really, really interesting story, is that generally if you put too much cushioning in shoes, then it teaches your body not to care. And then you're not, you know what I mean? It takes away that response your body needs to know how to respond. And also you can be more soft, so you focus on being more soft when you run, so you minimize the impact, so you try and do it through your body rather than cushioning, which it makes you less strong. Pretty much it weakens you, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go this barefoot thing, because it stimulates all the different tendons and all the ligaments in your foot that usually is cushioned and separated from. So yeah, so I'm all for this barefoot movement.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned in your thing was about smiling at strangers, and from what you've previously said, it sounds like that's something that you have maintained.
Yeah, I still do that really regularly. I smile at a lot of strangers here, and often they smile back. I think even in Singapore, you know, on the train, I've had like really cool conversations with people like sitting next to me just because I chose to make eye contact with them when we were on the train together. And I feel actually maybe even because of how I present, and that kind of thing, it has also made people in Singapore curious to talk to me also, because a lot of the time they think that I'm from somewhere else, or, you know. Yeah. So it works out quite well, but I do really enjoy smiling in general, and I see no reason to like keep my joy inside just because there's strangers around.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I love like all the like videos I've seen you talk about. You've just got such an infectious, just such a joyous kind of giggle and laugh. So I definitely wouldn't be keeping that. It's, and the last thing was that you mentioned about hugs, which, again, I think you continue to do. And this kind of reminds me when I did a documentary quite a long time ago, over a decade ago, for Taiwan Discovery, and it was about happiness. It was about finding the path back to happiness. And one of the last things we did was one of those free hugs things in one of the central locations, which was a lot of fun. So how do you find that these days in terms of hugging and the whole, what do you call it? I guess the trying to think of that word about how you should go about it. Starts with E.
Well, when you start talking about it, the first thing I thought about was like physical distancing. Like, I mean, first of all, that's the thing with COVID, you know? Like, COVID has really changed the way that people feel about physical contact. I mean, in New Zealand, obviously, it's way more liberal than in other places. Basically, in New Zealand, people are living as per normal, you know, like especially in my area, maybe
Yep.
not so much in the city, not in like Auckland, for example. Perhaps people would still be apprehensive, but where I am, it's quite rural, and it's as if COVID doesn't really exist, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very similar where
So
I am as well. Because
yeah,
we haven't had cases for like a couple of months now, I think. So I think everyone feels quite safe here.
yeah. That being said, I do think that when I spoke about that intention to hug everybody when I met them, and that was like my period of experimentation with doing that. I think the reality is that it came with a certain amount of imposition. If I'm honest, I was trying to make a statement. I was trying to influence people, and I was trying to get my way. I was trying to make people greet me the way that I wanted to be greeted, without honestly taking into account their boundaries and their needs, and their chosen way of building connection with somebody. And now, because I see everything as energy, I find it quite easy to reach the same level of intimacy with someone without physical contact, even though, yeah, I might hug someone else. It's really just about feeling into people, which I do much more with finesse now than I did at the time of talking about hugging everybody. Yeah, because we all have different ways of feeling close, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and we've all been through different things, and we all feel different levels of safety around physical contact. So now I really only hug someone if I can clearly feel that that's where they're at. And with someone else, I might make a joke to reach the same level of intimacy. And it's really just about forging connection. And I'm able to do that with anybody if I respect them and really feel who they are before being like, I'm going to hug you because that's what I want to do.
You know, yeah, I really love that evolution that you've just spoken about. And I actually went through a very similar kind of process, because back when I was in medical school, we had this subject called social medicine. And I did something really like very different for my project. And my project was, I actually did a hug study. I found two groups of people and I prescribed them, you must get X number of hugs a day. And then I checked all their vital stats and all this kind of stuff, and then graphed this all out. And yeah, so I kind of went through that whole thing as well. It's the same kind of positioning. And yeah, now I'm moderating it and not making it such a must thing. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
All right, let's just one last thing before we say goodbye. I'm curious. We've spoken a lot about a lot of things, and I wanted to finish off with the idea of a bumper sticker. Now, you've probably never had a car, right? Did you ever own a car? Or oh, you do? Oh, great! You're in New Zealand. You have a car.
I have a car. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay. So
I'm learning how to drive. I'm actually still learning how to drive. But I bought a car with my partner So it's our car. It's not just my car. But it is really necessary for me to learn how to drive here because I'm living rurally and
Yes.
basically I have no independence otherwise. Yeah.
So you've got a car, which is great. So one of the things that a lot of cars have are bumper stickers. I don't know whether you've got one on yours, but I was just wondering if you were going to put a bumper sticker on, what would it say?
I actually I wrote a poem recently, and the first, like, the opening lines of the poem, which are sung, are coming to mind. And so I'm gonna sing you these opening lines, and then I think there's one line out of all of them which I'll choose, but I'll only know that once I've sung it to you.
Awesome.
Who are you? And where do you come from? Who gave you the words under your skin? How can I call you into being? How can I call myself to be? How can I call myself to be? Probably, who are you and where do you come from?
Cool.
As much as I said that I didn't want to talk about the past, that is what makes us who we are. And it's from that point that we can choose our future. It's only when we fully embody the past that we can choose our future, actually. Not erase it, not reject it, not wish that it was different. Truly accept it and embrace it as who we are at this moment so that we can design who we continue to be.
Love it. Who are you and where do you come from? All right. Going to be a big bumper sticker. All right. Well, look, it's been wonderful having a chat with you and talking about all this great stuff. And I really appreciate being able to celebrate our humaneness or our humanness in this conversation. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you? What are the best ways?
Yeah, I'm on a lot of the things. I'm on Instagram as arunditha.b.your.self. And I'm on Facebook as Arunditha. It's my artist page. And then I have a website, arunditha.com. But if you really just Google Arunditha and make sure it doesn't correct to Arundathi, you should be able to find me really easily.
All right, that's cool. And we'll have all the links to all the things you just mentioned. It'll be all on the podcast page with all your details as well. So
amazing. Thanks so much, Derrick. Yeah,
No,
I really enjoyed talking to you too.
Yeah, it's been fun. And wishing you a wonderful rest of your day in that beautiful space that you have there.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I have like quite a full day today, and it feels great. Yeah.
All right, thank you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
What a treat to hear Arunditha sing a cappella, and what a wonderful way to close this episode. We really did cover so much, and I'm definitely going to hit replay to let some of those thoughts and ideas sink in more. How was it for you? Really would love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so please do leave your comments below so we can keep the conversation going. As shared, links to our website are in the description below, including links to the performance poetry we talked about. If you enjoyed the episode and got some value, please do share so others can benefit too. And don't forget to also follow, like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you'll be notified of new episodes when they drop. As for the next episode, well, it's still up in the air, so you'll just have to hang in there till the next time to find out who's on. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you in the next one. Until then, stay lit.
This has been a Living Lit.life production, copyright 2021, all rights reserved. To join me as a guest on the show or for sponsorship and partnership inquiries, please email hello@livinglit.life. And don't forget, stay lit. See ya.